Certainly, Daiva Mutasya, by chance having escaped, Pasyo, of the human animal, Paravin, the path, Tat Anucharaha, his followers or assistants, Paridanatitaha, searching here and there to find. That's all we have on the board. Tasya he deva muktasya posya vidyanam tat anutraran paradivanto nista nistya samame tayastra ratyam anugratya pasya anmatikena vidini kedarana musyanena mirgad viradibeyaha samyati samanam angira parvasutam apasyam. Anybody want to do it? Tashaha deva muktasya prosya pradidam tadanat kradya pratimatvanta. Translation and purport. No purport. First translation. The leader of the dacoits captured a man-animal for sacrifice, but he escaped, and the leader ordered his followers to find him. They ran in different directions, but could not find him. Wandering here and there in the middle of the night, covered by dense darkness, they came to a paddy field where they saw the exalted son of Angra family, Jadbharat, who was sitting in an elevated place guarding a field against the attacks of deer and wild pigs. Please repeat. The leader of the dacoits captured a man-animal for sacrifice. Nobody here speaks? You got to repeat. But he escaped, and the leader ordered his followers to find him. They ran in different directions, but could not find him. Wandering here and there in the middle of the night, covered by dense darkness, they came to a paddy field where they saw the exalted son of the Angira family, Jadbharat, who was sitting in an elevated place, guarding the field against the attacks of deer and wild pigs. The reason we repeat it is so that we learn the verses as we go through the Bhagavatam. If you don't repeat it, it means you're sitting idle and you're not going to hear anything anyway. So at any rate, next verse. I'll just read translation. The followers and servants of the dacoit chief considered Jadbharat to possess qualities quite suitable for a man-animal, and they decided that he was a perfect choice for sacrifice. Their faces bright with happiness, they bound him with ropes and brought him to the temple of the goddess Kali. In some parts, purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. In some parts of India, animalistic men are still sacrificed before the goddess Kali. However, such a sacrifice is only performed by Sudras and dacoits. Their business is to plunder the wealthy, and to become successful, they offer animalistic man before the goddess Kali. It should be noted that they never sacrifice an intelligent man before the goddess. In the body of a Brahmana, Bharat Maharaj appeared deaf and dumb, yet he was the most intelligent man in the world. Nevertheless, being completely surrendered unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he remained in that condition and did not protest being brought before the deity for slaughter. As we have learned from the previous verses, he was very strong. He could have easily avoided being bound with ropes, but he did not do anything. He simply depended on the Supreme Personality of Godhead for his protection. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes surrender unto the Supreme Lord in this way. Narabi Rabihi Yeyacha Toraha Nityadasya Prataya Adhikaranam. O Lord, I am now surrendered unto you. I am your eternal servant, and if you like, you can kill me, or if you like, you can protect me. In any case, I am fully surrendered unto you. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. You may not know, but so many years back, there were many headless bodies found on the banks of the Jamuna. And so there's tantrics. This is the land of Tantra. And we may not know it, but all this black art is definitely being used today. And so if you don't know, Tantra is a very serious manner of how you gain influence and prestige and pratishta. You can gain all these things through this Tantra. Okay, so the Tantrics, there's a burning god at the other end of Jamuna on a river. And there we found one time a guy drinking out of a skull, and he's a Tantric. And so these guys, they'll do anything for a little bit of money. And so we have Tantras. There are many coming and going. People learn the art. It's like learn any science. You learn how to be a Tantra. Okay. So Kali worship is going on, like Prabhupada said in Calcutta, and it's still going on. And instead of slaughterhouses, they have temples of Kali where they offer goats, sheep, etc. And so, but that offering to Kali is not acceptable. So it's just a means by which they can eat meat, fish and eggs, and just go on with their merry way. So Prabhupada did say that the worst and the best come out of Bengal. So there are these worst as well. So it's not all peaches and cream. And so, but here at Vrindavan, many examples. I give examples because it tells a story. I mean, if we don't get realizations of these stories, it flies by. But what happened on a practical level? Now, I've had a studio downtown, size of Krishna Balaram Temple, very big place. It was given to me in a gift, and I was the Sevite, so I had possession of it. And 3 men who tried to cheat me died. 3 men. And then there are 2 of my managers who weren't chanting, they died. 1 guy hung himself. Okay, so there's 3, that's 6 deaths related to that place. Now, 2 of my managers, unfortunately, weren't chanting, and they passed away. So the chanting is so important that if we stop for a second, we're liable to get hit by Tantra. But if you're chanting, you're protected. And the famous sloka is that if Krishna wants to kill you, nobody's going to save you. And if anybody wants, just the opposite also. So we're protected. Nobody's going to be affected by any Tantra as long as you're chanting and follow the regular principles. But if you're not, then you got a problem. And so this takes place for people. I'm also full of prastista. You can call that my middle name. I want power, control. I want followers. I want money. I want everything I can get my hands on, material. I want everything that can be taken and used to glorify myself. Now, if you know what the antithesis of all of that, just the opposite. You don't want any of that stuff. But if you do go for it, any part of it, and Prabhupada said a spiritual master should not take worship in the temple in front of the deities. He should not accept obeisances in front of the deities. He should not have his feet bathed in front of the deities. So all these things, unfortunately, take place. So, but this is specifically said by Srila Prabhupada. Now, on the brighter side, okay, Rath Yatra in Gundichi, and one thing I'd learned was that King Edrajuna, the king who established Jagannath Puri, what was his wife's name? Anybody know? Nobody knows. Gundicha. So there's a relationship here. And it's in the Puranas also, that name is prominent. And it also says in Shiva Purana, I saw it with my own eyes, somebody showed me in Puri, that the time will come in Jagannath Puri when the birds will nest on the very top of the dome. Right now they're somewhat down, and they're trying hard to keep it from going up. But if they go to the top of the dome, it's said in the Shiva Purana that a whole bunch of Russians will come with guns. You getting that? And so these Russians will take Jagannath away from the temple into a new temple, and it's alighted that it be a foreign temple. and they'd be led by an Italian. So who that Italian is, we don't know. But anyway, that's what it says in Shiva Purana. So they're afraid of that, and that's one of the reasons they won't let us in the temple, because they don't want any kind of foreign element to transpire those doors. So Prabhupada was very upset about that, and that's one of the reasons he never went there. He did go finally, and he did a testimony for somebody's book, but he kept pleading over and over again, do not do this. We have established Jagannath temples all over the world, in all major cities. And what is the reason for a Jagannath temple? Well, the reason is very clear. When Lord Chaitanya was going through the Jharkhand forest, what did he do? He got the animals that chant the holy name, splashing the elephants, and they, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. You get the whole mantra out by the tigers and the deer and the elephants. So what is the Rath Yatra about? It's the same thing. They get these animals to chant the holy name. And so even if a person just sees the carts, any part of the world, now it's all the major cities, so a good chance maybe 80% of the world sees the carts. So what does that mean? They get liberated. There's some kind of liberation in store for those people who just see the carts. What to speak of pulling a cart? What to speak of worshiping Lord Jagannath? What to speak of becoming a devotee and chanting the holy names day and night? So all these things are in the favor of people like us sitting in the Dham, accepting the mercy of the Lord as it comes. And so the whole idea is to keep on accepting as much as we can and still be like, able to give mercy to others and go on with our spiritual life. So, Jad Bharat, he understood that ultimately these dacoits, when they were going to kill him, were in trouble. Because being a realized soul, he knew that they were going to be killed. He already knew that. So he took the advantage and he just went with them. And being surrendered to the Lord, he knew that Krishna would protect him. Okay, so he was saved, of course, and dacoits got their heads chopped off. It brings up a story. There's one of Prabhupada's dear friends in Bombay, Mr. Sethi. Have you heard his story, Mr. Sethi? Anybody heard his name? We hear his name periodically. He passed away. But he was telling Prabhupada, and I heard it on the tape, that one time a bunch of Muslims were coming to attack a temple, not our temple, but another one. And so he was with other friends, and they were on a bullock cart, and they were getting off the cart. So I said, okay, come on. You want to fight? Come on, we'll take you on. And so the first thing he didn't do it, but one of his friends, he took a sword and he chopped off the head of the first guy. They got off the cart. And so immediately they all just turned around and ran. So this is something that Prabhupada made jokes about. Because Sethi was also the same person who ran to his house and got his gun and came back. Meanwhile, one lady, she saved the temple from being smashed, Maitahili, and she's been given a benediction by Prabhupada to go back home because of that. She stood in the way of these guys trying to destroy the temple and protected the deities. And so they were protected long enough. Sethi comes with a gun and just scared them all off. And the same and this happened in Africa. A bunch of devotees protecting the deities. One guy had his arm slashed off, and somehow they put it back together, and he was actually using his arm again. But protecting the deities, again, another big story. And then it happened, and it was some people say it was an intentional thing to put people in the line where they knew there was a lot of danger. But there was a whole group of devotees in Africa who were put up against the wall and shot down like a firing squad. So this is our history. People died in the cause of developing this movement. And then there's a couple of stories, of Lord Nrsingadev stories, on how devotees are protected. Is that Hridayananda tells one story that one harassing guy was keep bothering and disturbing the kirtan party. And so he kept telling, listen, don't do this. You're jeopardizing your own life. I mean, you could be dying any minute. She says, just don't bother the devotees, otherwise you're in trouble. And so what happened? The guy had a heart attack and folded and died on the spot. And then Jayananda, another story, he's leading a kirtan San Francisco at Fisherman's Wharf. And so what happened, this big guy, bigger than him, Jayananda was over 6 foot. This guy was bigger and heftier. He was like a 300-pounder. So he starts swearing at Jayananda. And so the two of the guys in the back was Keshava, another, maybe Gurkripa. And so they're getting ready to fight. This is a big fight coming up. Devotees are supposed to fight. If they're being threatened, you don't sit back and let your head get chopped off. And so the guy backed off. He says, Jayananda went right up to his nose. He says, chant Hare Krishna. And the guy, Hare Krishna, and turned around and walked off, scared him. But another guy wasn't so afraid. And he came up to Jayananda and harassing the devotees. And he said, listen, I'm telling you, be careful. You may get shut down. Krishna doesn't appreciate this. So if you keep doing this, you're going to die. And so he said, big funny joke, hard bo. And so he backed off into the street and got hit by a bus. Ran him over, dead. Okay, so the moral of the story is that these things do happen. That the devotees are protected, and the demons, and that's Krishna's means by which he comes to the planet, protect the devotees and annihilate the demons. Okay, in that course of this happening, there's been many cases where miracles take place and devotees are in danger. And there's one devotee his name is Kanva, used to be gardener in Mayapur. And so he slid off a cliff, and he's hanging in Hawaii on this cliff just by his fingers. And so, and no way to hold his feet. So how long can you hold on by your fingers? So he's dug into the cliff, and he said to himself, if there's a God, if he can save me now, I'll dedicate my life to him. And so there was a lady going by in a boat, in a cruise boat. She had binoculars and saw this guy hanging on the rope, on the cliff. Called the captain called Coast Guard. Within a few minutes, there was a rope from a helicopter right next to him. Grabbed the rope and was saved. Still a devotee. He and George Harrison were good friends. They're both gardeners. So, these stories are plentiful because ultimately Krishna does protect us. And I wanted to make a couple points. When the festival was happening in Gundachi, many things took place. First off, Advaita Acharya's son, Gopal, was chanting and dancing and went into a whole other ecstatic trance. He fell down and collapsed and he stopped breathing. So Advaita Acharya came over to his son and trying to pump air and trying to get him to revive the son. And so he wouldn't breathe, so he was like gone. So Lord Chaitanya comes over and said, Gopal, stand up. Put his hand on his chest, and Gopal stood up and started chanting and dancing. Then a story about King Prataparudra's trying to get into darshan with Lord Chaitanya. He wouldn't allow it. But the son, the prince, came along and he was benedicted and got that blessing. Then there's a story of the Brahmin, Bengali Brahmin, who was during the washing ceremony. He washed Lord Chaitanya's feet with water and drank the water. And so, it says that actually Lord Chaitanya was pleased by it. But this show, in front of everybody, couldn't let that happen, so he chastised the boy and sent him out. Srib Damodar threw him out of the temple. But actually he got forgiven and he got liberation. And so the return means that it's 2 miles northeast of the Jagannath temple. So today is, of course, the return ceremony going back. So going back means you're going back to Dwarka, you're going back, Krishna has to return. And Radharani, looking at Krishna in that beautiful attire as a king, and just all the paraphernalia with the elephants, and they came with a big, huge entourage. It wasn't a small deal. When Krishna moved, everything moved. And so I'm reading Brihad Bhagavatamrita and illustrating. So in Mayapur, there's going to be 3 levels of dioramas, which will be gracing the whole interior of the dome in the drum area. And so there will be Brihad Bhagavatamrita illustrated. I'm doing the drawings now. It's not in feet, it's in kilometers. And it goes around 3 times around the biggest dome in the world. Shri Gaurnitai Ki Jai, Krishna Balaram Ki Jai, Radha Shyama Sundar Ki Jai. And so, at any rate, that story is when the Gopal Kumar finally arrives at a destination. He gets to Goloka, and ultimately he's in the family of Radharani. And so, one thing about slaughter and the way Jad Bharat was taking on the no fear element, that actually if a devotee is strong in his faith and his understanding that he's protected, there's no fear. And you have no obstacles, you have no opposition, and you're actually free to advance your Krishna consciousness and help others along the way. And so, but here in India, it used to be a lot of cows. All over the streets of Vrindavan used to be cows, plenty. I mean, in Goloka Vrindavan is nothing but cows. And so what happens here is that one by one they're disappearing. And so they're valued at 1 lakh dead or alive. And so Muslims are taking these cows. And even Gandhi, when he was told that now, okay, you're professing Bhagavad Gita, and you have control of your prime position. Now stop the Muslims from killing a cow. He says, no, that's the religion. I can't stop. And so Prabhupada commented on that Gandhi promoted, cow killing in his time. And this whole time of nonviolence was an asset to the British. Now the British did a wonderful thing. When they drew the line, Pakistan and India, they kept Lahore on the Pakistan side. And so it was mostly Hindu. And so when they had to separate, when there's a line of Hindus coming into India, coming south and going north were all the Hindus, the Muslims. They were fighting along the way and millions got killed. There was such anger. And so even that anger continues to this very day. So Prabhupada said the British are very intelligent. Those born in the British body, they know really how to work angles. And so it used to be the sun never set on the British Empire. Now in London, the sun never shows. But it's because of this karma. And so, and Prabhupada made a joke, now we have so many British devotees, and now they're becoming gurus, and these British gurus are changing Indians into devotees. So it's like a very funny twist. So Prabhupada, he made many jokes. First I want to say one thing, which is, he said he predicted some things that are taking place and will yet to take place. He says Krishna consciousness will take over the world. The governments will be run by devotees. They'll be like he was trying to give to Indira Gandhi, the regulations that he wanted to have happen. So he wanted that all the ministers and parliament members wear tilak and go to the temple every day. Join in kirtan for an hour. He wanted, it's listed, it's in Prabhupada's house, the list is there. And so he had that in a little notebook, and he was ready to ask for many things, but she was really upset because the prime minister in Bangladesh got shot and was killed. So she knew she was next. In any case, he didn't have much time to talk to her, but he asked for 500 free visas for his students. Devotees would get free stay in India. She agreed, but it never happened. So Prabhupada tried his very best to push on and get the government to give control. So it turned around that the only way to drive the British out of India at that time was Subhas Chandra Bose with his independent Indian army. And he talked about that at length, that it was he that actually got the British out. Because in Gandhi's time, nonviolence, they were happy. And the Viceroy, according to Prabhupada, encouraged that. encouraged Gandhi to go on with his nonviolence and kept encouraging him along the way so that it wouldn't stop. But when the British understood that the Indian force, I mean, the money was Indian and the labor and the soldiers, the army was Indian. So when that fell apart, being very intelligent, the British pulled out. But it wasn't Gandhi, it was Subhas Chandra Bose. Now, I have a couple more points I wanted to get out. So the part of the action that Prabhupada wanted that would take place, and that will take place, is that the farms will be set up to receive millions of people. Eventually it'll increase to that extent that people will be unemployed, the economy will drop, and there will be no money value. There'll be like, a problem with currency because it's all paper. And then people will be without money, without homes, without any shelter. So they will come in millions, not thousands, millions to our farms around the world. And we should be ready to accept that. And even here in Vrindavan, people will start coming. This place will be overloaded. And they'll be coming here looking for shelter and means to survive the onslaught. There'll be a lot of killing going on. So in the end result, Krishna consciousness will excel. Just because it's the ultimate end that happens in the reversal of when big catastrophe takes place. When someone's about to die, suddenly, or some death in the family, they begin to think serious about what death is all about. Okay, one thing about cleaning the temple, the Gundachi, is that the reason Lord Chaitanya made such a stress, and it was gone through twice, thorough cleansing, is that, we're accused of being brainwashed, and it's also heart washed. And that's what Prabhupada wanted. He wanted us to have a clean heart and a clean brain. So the others in the world, those who are non-devotees, they're the ones with dirty brains, and should be clean. But the brainwashing effect had this I just saw a picture of the early 60s in Life magazine. There was a group of devotees dancing. And so the hallmark of devotional service started in New York, and as we know, spread all over the world. But it starts with chanting the holy name. So the things that Prabhupada wanted: mass distribution of prasadam. And that would be like opening all the storage grains and giving food to everybody. Now, governments have big surplus of foods and they just hang on to it. And mass kirtan, so that people around the world dancing and chanting, in millions, not hundreds or thousands, but millions of people. And so stop animal slaughter. It means a gradual progression. First, that you can't keep there'd be no slaughterhouses, but if you want to kill an animal, you do it in your home. So it means anybody who still had a hankering for meat had to kill the animal himself. There was just a couple of weeks ago, there was a week of meat in Cambodia. I mentioned last class that they were killing all the dogs. And so all the dogs were being used as, a big festival. So anyway, that happens. Okay, one point was that when Rupa Goswami wrote that verse, and it was stuck in a thatched roof, and Lord Chaitanya found it, he grabbed Rupa and he slapped him, and he put him on his lap, and says, "How did you know my intention? How do you know my inner feelings? How could you do that? How could you know that?" And Prabhupada had the same thing happen in front of his spiritual master. That when he composed that poem on the Guru Purnima, or the day of his spiritual master's Vyas Puj, that ultimately the same thing. He knows my heart. How can he know that? So Prabhupada, very special person, and we'll never get the end of that one, because Prabhupada is like there forever in our hearts. Okay, there was this, with Radharani, the verse that was written by Rupa Goswami read like this, spoken by Radharani: "I have met my old and dear friend, Lord Krishna on the field of Kurukshetra. I am the same Radharani. We are meeting together and it's very pleasant. But I would like to go to the banks of the Jamuna, beneath the trees of the forest, and hear the vibration of his flute, the fifth note. So Radharani was only in that mood. She couldn't get out of it. Even Krishna invited her to Dwarka, which we don't know about. But she refused, and I can't do that. I can't leave it. I'm going back to Vrindavan. So they separated their ways. But of course we know Krishna never leaves Vrindavan. The separation is meant to make people hungrier for that. That's the thing that Lord Chaitanya was saying when he was dancing. He says, I'm dancing, but I'm in a fire. I'm burning up by lusty desires. And what does he mean by that? That he was burning in a fire of separation. And so he spent all his time in the Tota Gopinath temple, and those last 12 years he was a madman. And he was with Gadadhar. And so they were talking, about the intimate relationship between Radha and Krishna, because they were, those two. And so he'd go banging on the walls. I mean, there are still marks on the walls in the Gambhira where Lord Chaitanya is, going through this mood of separation. And so that is the fire that is kindling in all of us, because we're only due to the separation. We haven't had that luck to be, totally with Lord Chaitanya, with Lord Krishna, or the Lord directly. Srila Prabhupada has. But he's giving that mercy to all of us in the form of this movement. So if we take it serious and just understand what we have an opportunity to go back to Godhead in this life. We don't have to do anything more. We don't have to do austerities and penances and fight for survival. It's all given hand to hand. It's like an automatic process. We just chant, be happy, take prasad, and go back home, back to Godhead. So it can't be a better thing. It's mentioned that the Jagannath festival was going on at least 3,000 years ago, and Christ was there. That's less than 2,000, and so he went and saw the Rath festival and was dancing. Can you imagine Christ dancing in the Rath festival? It happened. It's in the Aquarian Gospel according to Prabhupada. And so when we clean our house or clean any cleaning done, it's like cleaning a marble. And the reason it's clean is makes room for the Lord to come into our heart. And clean marble means very cool. So marble floors are in all our temples. And when they're clean and fresh, it means it's a very fresh mood. And if our heart is like that, if we keep our heart cleansed, meaning chanting and following the principles, taking prasad, following the program, then ultimately we have a clean heart by which we can actually see Paramatma in the heart. Prabhupada predicted that happens. He said that'll happen to you, that you actually see Krishna in your heart, and he'll manifest. And little by little, if you listen to the heart, that small voice, they call it conscience. It's something that a voice comes up that tells you not to go right or go left, but go straight, not to make an offense. But actually, if you follow the voice, it'll take you right back home, back to Godhead. And that voice gets stronger. The more you listen for it, the more it will be apparent, and it'll become very strong. Some years ago, I did a class here, and I had everybody meditate. Please listen carefully. Now, if we're quiet and peaceful and subdue our mind, our senses, actually we can arrive at a stage right now by which we can hear that fifth note. We can hear Krishna's flute. Now, I had it arranged next backstage. There was a guy with a tape on the flute. and so at the right moment, everybody was quiet. There was peace in this wonderful temple. Nobody said a word. Everybody was listening and meditating. Had everybody close their eyes. Okay, now think very seriously and deeply and just listen and see if you can hear that flute. And so he played the tape very softly, and it opened up. Oh, I saw the ladies, big surprise on her faces. Like, oh, we can hear it. There's the flute. And so it's no joke. If we listen, if we become a little serious about our spiritual life, you'll hear it. You'll get the flute. And if you hear that, and you know what happens. I mean, animals go crazy. And cows and the birds. I mean, when Gopa Kumar finally gets to Goloka, and he hears the flute, and everybody is just stunned. It's just at a moment that it can't erase anything happened. Time and it's all space is finished, And so, because that flute is so strong, and he plays any subtleties, then you just go out of it, and you just can't stay awake. You can't survive it. And so you just go unconscious. And so, Prabhupada talks about that very wonderful experience of hearing that flute. Now, Prabhupada had so many experiences. In Jhansi, where he got that garland, he got a garland from Krishna, kadamba flowers. And so he was dancing and banging off the walls, playing the mridanga. He was going wild, just chanting and tasting the nectar that came with that aromatic. It said it was so aromatic that it was like he couldn't. It was that one first disciple that asked Prabhupada about it, but he smelled the aroma of those flowers. Kadamba flower don't smell like that. And so that was just one experience. He says, well, I was dancing and chanting because I was chanting, Krishna appeared to me and gave me this garland. Then I tried to touch his feet and he disappeared, and I couldn't hang it. I couldn't hold it after that. And so he's on the Vyasa here, and the same thing happened. He just went into this ecstatic trance. I mentioned some stories that I tell them over and over again, because sometimes if you repeat a story, even though you heard it before, it goes deeper inside our consciousness. So repeat, like Prabhupada, the chanting of the Maha Mantra, the only way, the only way, the only way. It's repeated. So you get the point. And so repeating a story is very important. And so he was like, many things happened that were unusual. And so when he was on the Vyasasana, he was in trance. It started a kirtan. How to do it? It started a kirtan. And so the devotees, they were in that mood with Prabhupada. So when Prabhupada went into it, actually you go into it a certain amount also. And so then he broke it with the chanting and started a kirtan. And so the devotees were angry at him. Then he asked Prabhupada, did I do okay? You went in and we were just sitting there in silence. We wondered what we should do. So I thought, well, I'll start a kirtan. And so he said, yes, yes. And Prabhupada apologized. It won't happen again. I'm very sorry. Prabhupada apologized for going into a spiritual trance. I mean, that's Prabhupada's humility. So a couple more stories and I'm going to finish. One is that there was a devotee in L.A. looking through a keyhole in Prabhupada's rooms. And he saw Prabhupada sitting there bathing in this beautiful light coming from nowhere. And his body was crystal and his eyes were diamonds. So he stopped, he went out, walked away from the door. Came back again, he looked and he saw Prabhupada rolling on the floor by himself, just rolling on the floor. So the servant later asked Prabhupada about that. He said, Srila Prabhupada, I'm sorry, I didn't want to bother you, but I want to check and see if you're okay, so I looked through the keyhole. And I saw you rolling on the floor. Oh, yes, this is not a big thing. Anybody know what he was rolling the floor for? Because he said, I was wrestling with Balaram. Okay, so he gets a garland from Prabhupada gets a garland from Lord Chaitanya or from Krishna. He gets so much mercy from Lord Chaitanya. He's wrestling with Balaram. Now, who is that Lord Chaitanya? Who is that Prabhupada? Let me a couple more things and I'll quit. Any questions? Anybody got any? There's no microphone.